Hello, this is the third video in my series of selecting a topic for Composition 2. First video was a PowerPoint presentation on selecting a topic. Second video was a review of the topic selection worksheet. Now we are on topic selection PowerPoint presentation part 2. So it's confusing, 3 parts, but this is part 2. Sorry about that. I wasn't planning it to go this way. Anyway, so this is a presentation on what to do and what not to do. Because when we say we're going to argue on a topic, some people get excited because they're like, yes, I can finally, solve the world's problems. And other people are just like, oh, crap, I don't want to do this. So let's reiterate a few things. First, your topic needs to be interesting to you. It should matter to you. You should have some skin in the game, right? Just a little, not too much, because, obviously, we might not be able to make any changes at this time, but I want you to be aware of this and how it's going to affect you, because then you'll care more. And then, again, you start broad and narrow your focus. So, in our paper, we need to think about this, the big picture. First, what we're doing is you're summarizing your topic by providing an overview. This is pretty important. You're giving background information and showing us where you fit in this broader issue. You need to explain what the issues are, what the research is. So what are people saying? So that's a literature review, followed by an evaluation of some arguments and controversies. We're going to look at an editorial review where you're going to look at a pro and con, opposing sides of a particular aspect of your topic. And you're going to kind of show us not only what the arguments are, but how good they are. Then you're going to provide your researched argument paper. This is kind of the bulk of it. You're providing information and explaining your stance on this position in the issue. And then finally, you get to propose a solution or a call to action. What should we do based on this information? So, as I said before, some people are excited because they finally get to do these big topics. Or maybe you've done something like this before and you've had to pick a big, broad topic. So I'm going to give you a list of things that I think you should avoid. You might want to say, okay, yes, finally I get to write about abortion and convince those jerks on the other side to see it my way. Or about guns, marijuana, suicide, euthanasia, gay marriage, animal testing, paying college athletes, and the drinking age. I've read a lot of papers on those latter topics, going from marijuana all the way down. I generally say avoid these topics because most of the time, they're either based on a moral issue, right? And if it's based on a moral stance, convincing someone to change their point of view is asking them to change their view of what is right and wrong, their morality. It's not necessarily going to happen when it comes to topics like abortion, guns, or gay marriage, or even animal testing, things like that, even suicide and euthanasia, because you're asking people to compromise something that is a belief that makes up who they are. It's not easy. So, consider how you would feel to give up a moral principle. So we have to try to avoid these things. And, your convictions might be good, right? You might think you have the perfect argument, but you might not actually have it, right? Topics are too charged and have polarizing language. What I mean by polarizing that is that most of the time, part of convincing someone else to see the other point of view is calling them names, telling them they're a bad person, or that they hate religion or the country or whatever. These topics are also too broad, right? So you're going to talk about guns or abortion or marijuana, right? They're just too broad. What in particular should we look at? And so I'll show you some examples on how we can narrow some of these things down, but really I think avoiding them altogether not only helps you steer clear of some difficult topics, but focuses you to think about things that matter a little bit more to you personally, affect you personally, right? Not that these don't matter, but they don't necessarily affect you as much. These topics are more nuanced than public perception depicts them to be, right? So when we get to logical fallacies, you'll hear about this either or fallacy. It's either you're with us or against us. So you either are pro guns or you hate America, or you're, you believe in economic freedom or you hate marijuana, right? Those sorts of things. And how do we phrase these things? And it's really more difficult. And that's, we can see that in the pro-life, pro-choice argument in abortion, because the opposite of pro-life is not pro-choice, and the opposite of pro-choice is not pro-life. They're arguing different things and different methods and different ideals. And they're not necessarily opposing sides, but they're opposing their words for opposing names that we attach ourselves to. So they're very nuanced, right? And we can get into that a little bit more later on. Oh, I just skipped ahead. I'm sorry. Just touched my mouse. All right. The other thing, the most important thing, is that these topics are going to force you to read, consider, and even accept points of view that you are unable to personally, ethically, or morally consider or accept without questioning yourself or positions. Basically, that's a long mouthful of a phrase. Basically, this paper is going to ask you to read opposing points of view and maybe agree with them. And if doing so is going to compromise your identity or your moral identity or stance, then you probably should avoid them, right? You have to consider that this other side might be right. You have to get that other opposing viewpoint the chance to argue their sides. Are you willing to say that, okay, well, yeah, you're probably right and I'm wrong? If you can't say that about one of these topics, then you probably shouldn't do it. That's not to say that you shouldn't have a firm belief and opinion, but you have to be willing to discover things. So in debate clubs, I never was in a debate club, but I've always heard this, that you should be able to argue both sides of a position. You should know it well enough that you can make the opposing side's argument for them. Are you willing and able to do that in a fair manner for these topics? And if you can't do that about abortion, guns, marijuana, suicide, gay marriage, animal testing, paying college athletes, and the drinking age, then you probably shouldn't do that topic. Now, I'll admit that the paying college athletes and drinking age and animal testing, those are all issues that I'm just tired of reading about because people haven't researched them well. So just to give you a heads up about that. So we look at, let's say, abortion, and I put this on there because people are convinced they have the right argument. So you may have a strong opinion and you may feel it's correct. That's good. Yet your opinion may not fit into a nuanced conversations about the arguments about abortion. So what is abortion, right? When does it happen, right? Is birth control, taking the pill, abortion? Well, to some people it is. Or is it late-term abortion? So those things that we're thinking about. What is abortion? There's the procedures, right? The D&C procedure that is often used when there is a miscarriage, and it's difficult to talk about, but things have to happen. It's a procedure to remove the deceased fetus from the mother before sepsis kicks in. And that's a thing that needs to happen. That is technically an abortion, and that procedure is banned in some states. You have to think about who is getting them, why, where, and when, right? It's not just people with loose moral boundaries that are getting abortions. It's people who are married, it's people who want kids, it's people who are religious. It's very interesting. And so we tend to paint this group of people with a very broad brush when we aren't really seeing that. Is there a specific reason why someone's getting that's more valid than others, right? Whose rights need to be protected? Is it the mother? Is it the fetus? Is it the baby? Who decides when? These things are important. If the person wants to, if the pregnant woman wants to get an abortion because the baby's going to die right at childbirth, whose rights, are more important? Those are interesting questions, and I don't think we have an answer that's universal, right? If we have to start making individual exceptions, I mean, that makes it difficult. Who's all involved? Is it just a decision between a woman and her doctor? Does the father of the child have a say in it as well? I believe one state recently tried to incorporate that into their law, which part of the problem would be if you were a victim of rape, your rapist would have a say in whether or not you could get an abortion? That becomes an interesting question. And what terms do we use? And you've heard me stumble over the, fetus or baby, things like that. Those words are loaded. Do we call a woman who's getting an abortion a mother just because she's pregnant, or do you have to have a kid if you're a mother? I don't know. These are weird things. So you have to define a lot of terms and establish a lot of parameters. It's not just abortion bad, or women's rights good, or whatever. So how we approach the topic without bias, we can't. We can't present an argument accurately because we're going to present extreme examples to support our point of view, and that just doesn't work. It gets complicated. So what I'm asking you to do is consider smaller topics, right? Consider different positions. Consider comparisons to other countries. Find a gray area where you don't have a strong fixed opinion. Maybe it is birth control access. Maybe it's sex education that you want to look at instead of abortion. Maybe it's abstinence-only practices that you want to look at. Is that preparing people? Maybe it's other things, and that might be okay. You could find a local issue, and that would be all right. Consider a different topic, right? Those are things to consider. Right? If you are adamant you want to do one of these big topics that I say you shouldn't do, we need to have a talk about them first. I would like to convince you to try something else because I've yet to read a paper on abortion that was all-encompassing and good. I've yet to read a good paper on the guns issues. I've yet to read a good paper on marijuana legalization. I've yet to read a good paper about, I've read one paper on euthanasia. That was good, out of like 10. So, I've read a lot of these papers. I can tell you what's going to be good and how we can frame our arguments. But it comes down to, if you're unwilling to read about another side and assume that they are right, you probably shouldn't pick that topic. So other issues that we can look at, right? Guns, right? You might have a big opinion on gun laws. That's fine. Recently Ohio passed a law on concealed carry in schools and daycares. Is that okay? Is arming teachers a good method of preventing shootings at schools? I mean, who is going to be shot, right? Those are interesting questions, and we can get into those. For marijuana, you might look at current laws, look at history. There's always this hypothetical argument, if we make it legal and tax it, we'll get rid of the deficit. Well, you forget the idea that marijuana sales currently exist on a black market. Why would that change? Doesn't it mean that law enforcement that's going to preventing usage gets now funneled into enforcing tax laws, right? Did you pay taxes on that weed? I don't know. Gay marriage, right? So we might look at other things like state laws about religious freedom. It doesn't only really consider one religion. Looking at conversion therapy, looking at banning adoption by gay couples. Those are interesting questions that you could start looking at. Does the state have a right? You might even think about the transgender bathrooms, right? Who do you have to prove it to? Can I accuse somebody of being gay or transgender in order to prevent them from doing something or accessing a service? Can I say, well, I make wedding cakes and I think you're secretly gay, so I'm not going to make this for you just because I don't like you, or whatever. Can I hide behind something? That's, of course, not very genuine or nice, but, what are these other implications? I do want you to look at comparisons. That's always good. So look at national, international laws. What are other states or countries doing? And why aren't we doing that? Or why is it a good thing we're not doing that? And then, remember, you're picking a topic that's interesting to you. You're going to make other people interested in it as well. But can you find research on that topic? We're going to have to talk about how we do research. We'll do that. You'll have to make a proposal about something that needs to be done. And don't try to work backwards. Don't be like, we need to ban all guns because that's the only way we're going to save lives. You're never going to get there. Instead, select a topic where you aren't sure what should be done and let yourself explore. I mean, you can look at saying, this is not the right way to do it. Let's explore something else. Here's why it's not going to work. Here's a better solution. That also works. But don't just come up with this thing. We need to do this, and there we are. And it's right. No, you have to work through it and show everybody your hard work. It's like doing a math problem. You can't just show your answer. You have to show your work. So keep thinking. Ask me questions. Run your topics through me, by me, whatever. Bounce them off me, and it'll be helpful. So good luck.